Blizzard canceled this WoW expansion forever. Secrets lost and cut content. Oh no. I love checking these kinds of videos out just to see like what we missed out on or what Blizzard was thinking, because sometimes these things come back too. Sometimes these ideas get shelved and they get pulled off the shelf later on. But let's see what this lost expansion is for World of Warcraft here from Necrowar.
World of Warcraft has seen 10 expansions released, with 2 more already announced. But what if things had gone differently? We know of at least one unreleased expansion and many lost concepts. The expansions we know could have had completely different themes, storylines, main characters, or might never have even existed. It's quite interesting to look back at all of this in retrospect. Today, I want to talk about unreleased expansions, a pseudo-leak of a new expansion.
This is an old map here. I've seen this before. How many of these did we actually ended up getting? The Broken Isles, yup. This is weird. Azeroth? Eastern Kingdoms was just called Azeroth originally. What the hell? Sir Arrays is all, yep. Zandalar, obviously we ended up getting Zandalar. Plunder Isle. I wonder if that's Koltiris and stuff. And then we can't see what's down here. Isle of Kazakh. Maybe that's the... Bilgewater. Okay, this is your Goblin Island. And then Telebeam. Did we get Telebeam? We don't have Telebeam. It's not a real thing yet. Interesting.
Talk about unreleased expansions.
Wait, Nazjatar and the Rift? Did you guys see that in the corner here behind my camera? Nazjatar and the Rift. Okay. Interesting.
Unreleased expansions. A pseudo-leak of a new expansion that stirred up the community and other fascinating
No, I didn't get Heroic
unrealized
Midnight
concepts
Tidewall.
that could have dramatically altered the direction of each add-on. Let's be direct. If you're interested in Warcraft, you've undoubtedly heard about the unreleased Southern Seas expansion more than once.
Yeah,
so
the pirate
I don't
expansion.
see much point in dwelling on it too long. One of the primary sources of information about this rumored expansion comes from Jonathan Startz, a former Blizzard developer who, during his tenure, contributed to a vast number of locations and dungeons. In various interviews, he mentioned that instead of the Burning Crusade, they considered a naval-themed expansion. The action would have...
A naval-themed expansion. Kind of probably... It could have been cool, man. We have an item called Telebeam. That's what I thought. I know I've heard the word Telebeam in WoW. Well, we don't have an island called Telebeam. I wonder what that was supposed to be in relation to. It sounds like some kind of night elf or elven island of some sort.
Unfolded in the Southern Seas, focusing on a pirate theme. However, due to technical issues and limitations, they decided to prioritize Outland, which was on a separate map, creating less strain on the game engine. Essentially, that's almost all we know.
A Southern Seas expand. You know what? We probably... Remember when I said they'll pull this shit off the shelf sometimes? We got the fucking shipyard in WoD. That was like the most pirate-esque theme we ever got, was that stupid-ass shipyard in WoD. Man, it could have been... Imagine you could have, like, customized your own ships, and I still hope they do this at some point. Kind of like how they redid flying in the game. Imagine we get, like, dynamic sailing or something like that. You'd be able to make your own fucking ship and sail this open seas and everything. That would be crazy. I would love to see some pirate open world content, something like that, but unfortunately we never got it. And I guess it was the engine that stopped them from being able to do it back then.
Just small fragments of information.
But the shipyard was a sad excuse
to speculation. It's
pirate
possible
ship.
that the Bloodsail Buccaneers would have played a significant role in the expansion. Booty Bay could have once again become a major player hub. We also might have seen numerous small islands, each with its own unique history. This is where the Warcraft RPG books become noteworthy. While not entirely canon, they contained interesting concepts. For example, there were more detailed mentions of Kazan, the Goblin Island that developers originally planned to introduce in vanilla, but postponed for many years. The RPG books describe Plunder Isle as an oddly shaped place that served as a convenient, protected hub for pirates. The Southern Seas also housed the Darkspear Islands, home to
the Southern Seas expansion. Probably you could have even done. You remember island expeditions? Like, people roll their eyes sometimes when you talk about island expeditions, but those things could have been really cool. I just feel like they stopped iterating on them. They were some kind of, quickly repeatable content. They were hard. You go out there and get them done real quick whenever you just had something to do. They were almost like a prelude to Delves. They kind of were. You just ran in there, you completed some missions, bam, it was done. They almost were like an early version of Delves. So, yeah, you could have easily had a pirate expansion with ships and all kinds of shit, and then island expeditions on top of that. Could have worked.
Itself. So, theoretically, there was a foundation for content. The question remains whether it would have been enough for an entire expansion, and if it would have been more interesting than the story of the Orcs' tragically destroyed homeworld, but that's no longer relevant. Discussions about a naval expansion resurfaced during Dragonflight, but for a different reason. The game began incorporating more and more elements that hinted at pirate themes, seafaring, and distant voyages.
Yeah.
Notes appeared about heroes crossing seas, and new cosmetic items with a nautical flair were added. So, once again, people began to theorize that a naval expansion might be on the horizon.
The Night Squall, I was just about to say. You guys remember when I dived into the whole Night Squall lore and I was like, guys, we're getting a freaking pirate expansion. It's happening. Yeah. Yeah.
And this doesn't even consider the numerous fan-made concepts of varying detail that envisioned how such an expansion could look. Unfortunately, it's unlikely we'll
Wasn't
see anything
BFA a
similar
naval
in the
expansion? It kind of was. I mean, BFA, like I said, Island Expeditions were very naval-esque. Like, once they do something like where they kind of, break down and get into the brass tacks of making an expansion and then they cancel it, a lot of times, like I said, we'll see those things show up in later expansions. So I don't know when this naval expansion was supposed to, he probably said it, but like I said, we got shipyards in WoD, we got Island Expeditions in BFA, like whatever this expansion was supposed to be, I'm sure we've gotten bits and pieces of it in other expansions at this point.
near future. Instead of the Southern Seas expansion, we got the Burning Crusade, a conceptually fantastic expansion
So it's
in
supposed
my
to be the
opinion.
second expansion.
While we know a lot about Vanilla's development, information on Outland's creation is comparatively scarce. However, there are mentions of fascinating concepts that, if implemented, would have drastically changed the tone of the Burning Crusade. Let's start with the basics, how the expansion would have begun. We, the heroes of Azeroth, having defeated an old god, slain Kel'Thuzad, and decapitated the Black Dragons, suddenly learn that the Dark Portal, sealed for many years, has reopened. High Lord Cruel would be rampaging across Azeroth, and skirmishes with Burning Legion forces would begin. Heroes would gather to stop this madness.
Legion invasions, hey, they ended up coming back. Legion invasions became a thing.
Preparing an expedition through the Dark Portal to resolve the problem once and for all. Originally, the premise was different. Instead of the Dark Portal suddenly opening and unleashing demons, the protagonists themselves would decide to open it. To do so, players would have to complete a questline for the Book of Medivh, an ancient and powerful artifact tied to the legacy of the Last Guardian, first introduced in the Warcraft RTS
Sounds
games
badass.
as the key to unimaginable forces. Afterward, players would gather the necessary materials and perform a ritual to open the Dark Portal. I suppose that many people would have to be involved in order to gather these resources. I think this would have been a lighter version of the Encourage
I was about to say, it sounds like an Encourage event, like a server-wide gathering event.
Gate opening questline. However, the idea of portals to other worlds wasn't supposed to be limited to just the Dark Portal and Outland. The Burning Legion used Outland as a convenient base of operations, a launching point for their endless campaign to attack and conquer other worlds, enslaving their inhabitants or stripping them of their resources. Illidan, realizing the scale of their threat, stood against the Burning Legion, and after seizing control of Outland, he began methodically closing the portals the demons used to travel between realms. But this didn't mean the Burning Legion would stop there, not at all. One particularly interesting remark from the developers while discussing the expansion was, in reality, the portals were closed by Illidan. However, some quests in the Burning Crusade expansion imply their reopening and travel to new dimensions, fighting the Legion in new worlds. Unfortunately, we weren't really given the opportunity to extensively travel to other worlds.
So was this supposed to be one? I wonder if this was supposed to be one expansion or like a multi-expansion threat where like we keep going to these other worlds to shut down the Burning Legion's operations there as these portals close. What is this? Chris Metzen revealed in a developer panels that Illidan closed all of the dark portals of the Outland. Nevertheless, Magus Rogue, a World of Warcraft RPG game designer from White Wolf, revealed the following. The portals were shut down by Illidan. Actually, however, some of the quests in Burning Crusade expansion have you reopened these, going into new dimensions, fighting the Legion and new worlds. Should be awesome. Yeah, if it ever happened, never happened.
Travel to other
Could have been
worlds
awesome.
Conquered by the Legion. Perhaps the developers ran out of time to fully implement this idea, or maybe the concept only sounded good on paper. In any case,
sounds
the
complicated
concept was
to
abandoned,
implement.
but it would have been incredibly interesting to see other worlds ravaged by the Burning Legion in the Burning Crusade. The initial plans for Cataclysm also held a number of intriguing differences compared to the expansion's released version. Cataclysm aimed to revamp much of the old world while adding new features. Initially,
Right.
Deathwing wasn't meant to emerge from the Maelstrom, but from a different location. a forgotten zone in the Eastern Kingdoms. Since the days of Vanilla,
Dragon Isles?
an area north of Stormwind had remained unused in the game. It lacked quests, NPCs, and environmental details, essentially functioning as a vast wasteland. Developers intended to utilize this very spot, making it Deathwing's emergence point. A massive scar, a scorched line cutting through several Eastern Kingdom zones and reaching the continent's eastern shore, would have visibly extended from this location. We also could have seen Deathwing's traces in Grim Battle. However, this idea was scrapped, and the location was simply submerged, seemingly never to hold anything interesting again. Incidentally, Grim Battle itself, as players speculated at various times, could have had a far more extensive storyline. To begin with, Grim Battle is a highly significant place in the history of the
big
Horde
lore.
and the First Wars. It was where the Orcs held Alexstrasza captive and utilized her dragons to wage war.
Yeah, and they raped Alexstrasza. I mean, we do this story. The freaking I think Blizzard shied away from actually talking about it. But yeah, they basically kept fertilizing Alexstrasza, creating a dragon army for themselves. That's what happened there. I don't know if that's been retconned. I know that doesn't get talked about that much because now you're not allowed to do that kind of stuff in games. But back then, that was what it was. They were basically like forcefully fertilizing Alexstrasza over and over so she could make dragon eggs for their dragon army. That happened.
Or against the Alliance. Several important battles of the First Wars also took place there. There are hints that this location was intended to be a full-fledged raid, not just a 5-person dungeon.
Grim
For
Battle
example,
raid?
the name of the map and some items included the raid tag, and the inherent importance of the place hinted at a much larger role. But let's shift to Kalimdor, where another zone was meant to receive more plot development. I'm referring to Silithus. This zone played a crucial role in Vanilla, as protagonists prepared for battle against the Chiraji and the old god Sithun there. The famous An-Chiraj Gate opening questline took place in this location. Its importance in Vanilla was immense. However, after Vanilla's events, the zone received almost no updates. Even in Cataclysm, changes were minimal, especially compared to other Kalimdor zones that were radically transformed. Within the game files, there was a questline hinting at a renewed...
Did Silithus eventually become important? I don't remember. Did it? What sword?
confrontation with the forces of the old gods. Initially, these quests would have players suspecting that the Chiraji were still active, despite being believed defeated. Furthermore, it seemed something sinister was brewing in the zone for Azeroth's heroes. Further into the quests, we would have learned that Twilight's Hammer cultists had recently been lingering around one of the hives, though their purpose wasn't entirely clear. Players, disguised as a Chiraji egg, were meant to secretly infiltrate the hive's lair, only to discover that cultists had established it as a hidden, inconspicuous base. There were also several other quests, though unlike the previous ones, they lacked textual descriptions. However, we could see what happened after accepting them. We would be transported into a dark vision of an old god. Above Cenarian Hold, an eye, the eye of the old god Sithun, would rise.
Okay, we got like a vision of N'Zoth, basically. You have a vision of N'Zoth. That's what, eventually this became that. Like, that's what I'm saying. You look at these old expansions or these things that never happened, and you realize they did happen, just in a very varied way.
Horrific tentacles would surround the city, and the stronghold itself would be engulfed in flames. Furthermore, demonic tentacles would sprout from the Night Elves tasked with defending the location.
Vision of Cthulhu.
We would have needed to save the situation and help the elves fend off the old god's forces. But what this vision truly signified, and what storyline it intended to convey, remains unclear. It's unlikely it signaled the full return of the old gods in Cataclysm. More likely, I'd assume, it was a new surge of activity from Twilight's Hammer cultists and other maddened factions. In the interim period between Mists of Pandaria and Warlords of Drraanor, an interesting controversy arose around a purported pseudo-expansion titled The Dark Below. Let's clarify. Over the years, World of Warcraft has seen countless expansion leaks, some impressively convincing, others clearly low effort and quickly forgotten. The story with The Dark Below is a little different. It all began with news that Blizzard had registered the trademark The Dark Below in the United States. The very next day, the same trademark was registered in Europe. What made this even more intriguing was that it happened shortly before Gamescom, where Blizzard intended to make a significant announcement. Blizzard hinted at a major announcement that would draw the attention of the heavens, the burning hells, and everything in between. This sparked considerable excitement within the Warcraft community.
Oh yeah, speculation videos.
Where Blizzard registered trademarks shortly before announcing new expansions. For example, news about the Mists of
I mean, basically, we got an Old God expansion later on, but I still say till this day, like, BFA didn't do the Old Gods justice necessarily. The whole fight with N'Zoth at the end wasn't that great. The whole, going down to what the hell is it called? The Dark City, whatever. It just wasn't, I wanted it to be like a full-on patch. I wanted to actually go explore all that shit. And instead, we only saw it in a raid. So unfortunate, but all of that was just, it felt like kind of rushed. Like it probably was supposed to be an entire expansion, and just never got it.
Pandaria trademark
The
registration.
Dark Below also sounds like it was supposed to be an underground expansion, which we have right now with the War Within. So all these ideas eventually showed up in bits and pieces.
Appeared in gaming media months before the official announcement. Some joked about the Dark Below, while others speculated and hoped such an expansion could actually materialize. Beyond assumptions about a potential Warcraft expansion, there was a theory that the Dark Below was an expansion for Diablo 3. As it turned out, that Gamescom exhibition was indeed expected to be Diablo related. But if it had been a Warcraft expansion, what could it have been about? Players latched onto the Warcraft RPG books, which contained mentions of the Dark Below. In old texts, it was described that the source of energy for sorcerers emanated from a horrifying place filled with demons and infernal creatures. In other words, it was a kind of hell in old Warcraft lore. In any case, something interesting seemed to be brewing, perhaps the return of the Burning Legion or new demon strongholds in Azeroth. However, fan hopes were quickly dashed. It turned out that anyone could file a trademark application, and it didn't even require a fee. Anyone could have submitted anything in Blizzard's name, so this entire story was likely a prank by trolls. Furthermore, at BlizzCon, developers confirmed
What? You can't submit for a trademark application in the company's name if you're not from the company. It could have just been trolls. Unless, sometimes companies will do this. I mean, yeah, trademarks, you can just file them. They're not completely free. You got to freaking pay to file them. But they're pretty inexpensive. So, I mean, yeah, if you want to throw people off your trail, you could file for a trademark that you're not going to end up using. That's fine. Imagine getting hyped for something dark like that, and then Pandaland gets announced. Yeah, that's basically what happened. And Mists of Pandaria, unfortunately, got a bad rap off the bat, and people didn't play it like they should have. And had they played it, they would have realized that's actually a great expansion. I think MoP was underrated. I always say that. People just got lost in the sauce when it came to pandas. They couldn't get over the fact that we were getting pandas, even though pandas existed in original Warcraft. But they couldn't get over that. They thought it was too Kung Fu Panda, and they were like, I'm done with WoW. But that was a bad choice, because actually Mist was a great expansion. Best expansion ever. It was, it was great. I don't know best expansion ever, but it was great. And Thunder Isles, probably one of the best patches that we've gotten.
They had not registered that trademark. Drraanor. So much has already been said about this expansion. Unfortunately, for a variety of reasons, Drraanor ended up being far less expansive than originally intended by the developers. A significant portion of the planned content was either cut, reworked, or removed altogether. Most players have heard about the loss of Farallon, a vast island and magical hub of Drraanor, once covered in dense forests and towering crystals.
We lost our capital cities in WoD. We were supposed to get High Mall and some version of a Draenei city in the original capital for the Draenei as the Alliance city, and High Mall for the Ogres was supposed to be the capital city for the Horde. And we never got either one. High Mall ended up becoming like a freaking janked raid, and that was it for that. And then the Draenei city just never came to fruition. So we ended up getting those campsites as our capital cities, which were complete garbage. But WoD was basically, its biggest fault was just cut content. Its story wasn't bad at all. Cinematic, badass. The story, pretty cool. The opening part of WoD, I loved it.
Use another
Mini coming in with the 44 months. Oh my
Long
god.
time no see, old man.
Oh my god, Mini, we've gotten old together. 44 months. Jesus. Thank you, man. Thank you for the sub. Tier 1 and probably my longest running sub, Mini. Thank you, man. Music was good too. Yeah, from MoP you're talking about. Yeah, for sure. If we're talking about WoD also had badass music. WoD was heavy metal, man. It was great. And the thing about WoD was just the cut content. We just ran out of things to do. Garrisons made it isolating. That was a problem too. Shipyards were a piece of shit thing. And then just nothing to do. Nothing to do whatsoever. That was the biggest problem of WoD.
Applies to the Ogre South Continent, which was meant to expand the lore of the Ogres, longtime enemies of the Orcs. On this continent, we had to face the Empire of Ogres, instead of their relatively limited appearance in Drraanor. We even have an in-game note from an orc.
Did you guys see that on the map real quick? Something really important I think that we've missed all these years. Look at that dick lake right there. Dick-shaped lake. Interesting. Why would they put a dick-shaped lake on the WoD map? Probably cut content as well.
Appearance in Drraanor. We even have an in-game note from an orc who claims to have seen those southern lands with his own eyes. Even the expansion's opening premise was supposed to be different from what we ultimately saw at release.
It's very dick-like.
Many early concepts were scrapped or replaced, which is of course completely normal in the development process. Just take a look at Legion's early concepts, where Kultiras was placed right next to the Broken Isles, or some of the initial artwork for the Maw. It's often surprising how different things could have been.
Oh my
so there's
god,
nothing
this is
inherently
badass.
wrong with early ideas being replaced.
What is this concept art for? This looks like the freaking, the entryway in Lord of the Rings with the two statues. You know, the two king statues with the hands? This is cool. What the hell is this supposed to be? There's like a light city and a shadow city with the two spears. The spear being held by two different Man, this is really cool. I wonder if this is ever going to show up in the game. Oh, it's Shadowlands concept art. Jesus. I see it now in the corner. My god. Yeah, well, this is too cool for Shadowlands.
Early ideas being replaced.
The Maw, he said it.
One of the earliest concepts imagined
The Maw turned out to be such garbage.
massive hourglasses connecting alternate Drraanor and Azeroth instead of the Dark Portal. These would have been located not in the distant part of Tanaan jungle, but in central Drraanor, at the crossroads of several zones. How this device would work is not entirely clear, but to be honest, the final idea with the Dark Portal was indeed better. Another very early idea didn't even involve alternate Drraanor at all. Instead, after his defeat in Pandaria and subsequent escape from prison, Garrosh would flee to Outland, the broken, twisted remnant of the original Orcish homeworld. There, he would seek out the lingering traces of ancient Orcish power and use one artifact to resurrect the legendary clan chieftains of old. In this version of the story, Garrosh was meant to grow even more dangerous and fanatical, ultimately serving as the final boss of the expansion, rather than meeting his end in a personal duel with Thrall in the fields of Nagrand. There was also a planned storyline involving a group
he's talking about the Mak'gura that freaking Thrall cheated in,
called the Okril'Lon, Horde warriors who had long defended the Horde fortress in the Blasted Lands. NPCs associated with the Okril'Lon are present in the game files as part of the Iron Horde, implying that some orcs may have betrayed the modern Horde and joined Garrosh's cause. Orgrim Doomhammer, a legendary orc and leader of one of the greatest clans, was supposed to have a much more prominent role in the story. A fierce warrior and pragmatist, Orgrim was known for both his strength and his deep loyalty to his people. In our timeline, Orgrim and the Frostwolf clan had a fairly positive relationship, which continued even years after the invasion through the Dark Portal. Orgrim and Durotan were friends, and both were skeptical of the direction Gul'dan was leading the Horde. Orgrim's hammer was eventually passed down to Thrall after the Second War, symbolizing the hope for a more honorable Horde. In alternate Drraanor, this friendship was reflected as well, though here, Durotan and Orgrim found themselves on opposite sides. Durotan opposed the Iron Horde, while Orgrim remained loyal to it. For a time, he eventually had a redemption arc, realizing the Iron Horde was a dangerous force leading their people
This kind of would have been
ruin.
cool.
In the release version, Orgrim dies in a battle with Blackhand, one of the key Iron Horde leaders. He only appears a handful of times in-game, even though there were plans to explore his character more.
I always thought Orgrim was more powerful than Blackhand. That would have been a... Well, I guess if Blackhand gets super empowered by Fel or something like some really crazy unfair advantage, then yeah, Orgrim would lose.
Deeply. There are hints that his storyline was supposed to unfold further in Gorgrond, but it was likely cut back due to significant reworks. The location was redesigned, and some parts of the storyline involving orcs were cut. There was even a planned questline involving the Worgen, focusing on their struggle to control their inner savagery. The daughter of King Greymane traveled to Drraanor, seeking a cure for the curse. One removed quest suggests the king himself was growing more feral, and this madness was spreading among the people of Gilneas. A chemist named Krenan Aranas eventually discovered something that might have helped them. All in all, there was a vast amount of story content in Drraanor that was either reworked or entirely scrapped.
Scrapped is more likely. I mean, WoD is the scrapped expansion. At least it led to Legion. They got to focus on making Legion really good, but that's the problem with WoD forever, is that there was just way too much scrapped content.
How many of these unused ideas still lie hidden deep in Blizzard's internal files is anyone's guess. But one thing is clear. Had these concepts made it into the final product, Warlords of Drraanor would have been a very different expansion.
For sure. Yeah, same with that Lost Pirate expansion and everything. Interesting video. I thought that was cool. The Lost Pirate expansion, I'm still sad to this day. I still think eventually, I don't know what's going to happen after The Last Titan, but maybe some kind of high seas expansion where we go explore the other side of Azeroth. That could be a really cool thing. You know, like a legitimate shipyard where you actually build a ship that you use as like a hub maybe or something for the expansion. Not like a garrison hub, because that wouldn't be great, but something where you get to sail around in. It'd be pretty cool. I think that'd be a fun expansion. But anyways, nice video here from Necro War.